So when you give to the poor, do not sound a trumpet before you, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets, so that they may be honored by men. Truly I say to you, they have their reward in full. But when you give to the poor, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving will be in secret. And your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you. Okay? It's almost 6 years ago we moved to the U.S. in Pasadena. And I remember the first thing we did was going to Bank of America and opening a bank account. And obviously that's how you new immigrants start. And once we opened the bank account, they asked, do you want to open a credit card account too? I said, sure, why not? It's free. We don't have to pay any monthly fee, nothing. And then I signed up. And then they said, what kind of reward schemes you want? And I said, what does that mean? They said, I can choose two options. There are two options. One is a cashback option. You know what I'm talking about, right? But 6 years ago, it was kind of new to me. I'm always skeptical when some people say that I will reward you, I'll give you something for free. You know, you probably know this in the Western society, there is no free lunch. So they always want something from you. So whenever they say, oh, I'm going to reward you, my first instinct is, I don't want any reward. But then they explained, you know, there are two ways of, because the reward is auto-generated, whether you want it or not. The reward is for every spending, every dollar you spend, there is a reward. And they said, if you don't want it, you can donate to charity or something like that. I said, no, I don't want it. Yeah, if I have a reward, I'm going to keep it, right? I'm donating enough anyway. So there are two options. And one is a cashback option, that is 1% of every spending, every dollar you spend, you will get, you know, they will credit back to you at the end of the month. And the other option is for every dollar you spend, they give you 10 air mile or something like that, which you can store up, you know, you can stack it up and keep it, and so that in the future when you travel, you can use it for, you know, the air miles, you know what it is. And the option was very obvious to me. I said, I'll take cash back. What do you mean, you know? It's, I always believe in immediate gratification, you know, gratification. You know, I get, yeah, so I was calculating if I run my rent and my college fee and everything through the credit card, I'll be spending at least $2,500 to $3,000 a month. That is around $25 to $30 per month they are going to reward me with cash back. I'm thinking that's around 5-6 burgers. And I'm kind of thinking, you know, I'm going to earn enough to have 5-6 burgers every month. And I'm very smart that way. I calculate that way to this day. I'm getting my cash back. But some of my friends signed up for air miles. They thought they didn't want that immediate gratification. They will rather wait. They will keep this, right? They will save this miles. And so when they saved around 1,000 miles, the company gave them 100 bonus miles. And then they saved up to 5,000, the company gave them another 1,000 bonus mile, because company is particularly interested in you if you are saving, because that also means that you trust the company. You trust their system, right? Cashback means that you get your money, you can spend it the way you want. That's the way I was calculating. But if you have air mile, your options are very, very, very limited. You can only travel. I mean, to me, it was not an appealing option at that time. But to cut a long story short, now most of my friends who signed up for the reward miles are flying all across the world for free, and I'm still eating my burgers every month. 5 burgers every month, I'm still eating it, right? The reason I'm saying this is that what we read today is the reward scheme according to the gospel. Jesus said, I am going to reward you. And you're not doing this for free. You think you're doing a big sacrifice. You are spending for me. You are living for me. You are giving for me. But there is a reward. But there are 2 ways you can opt this reward. One is immediate gratification, right? Like cash back. You can either get rewarded by the people who see you honored by men. That's a reward, right? That's cash back. Immediate, you get it immediate. Or you can save it up for the future, where the God who sees in secret will reward you. So either you can be rewarded by the men who see you in public, or you will be rewarded by the God who sees you in secret. Either or. Cashback or reward mile. But for signing up for the second option, you have to really trust me. You have to trust that I see you. Because you're not going to get anything right now, right away, immediate. There's no immediate gratification. But if you trust me, one day you will earn enough miles so that you can fly. So that you can fly. So there are two reward schemes. And Jesus is putting it in front of us. And I wanted to talk a little bit about today about giving. And as you know, you've been following me, I did 2 other series on giving. Just to give you a quick recap, the first one, I'm not going to reproduce the whole sermon. It's somewhere on YouTube, you can go and listen. And the first Sunday I mentioned that giving is loving. For God so loved the world that he gave. He gave. He gave. Giving is an important part of, integral part of loving. You cannot just say that I love you, pastor, or I love you, my wife, or I love you, my children, and not give them something tangible. Because loving and giving goes together, right? That's what we discussed the first Sunday. And another Sunday, I talked to you about giving is losing, right? So giving is not, I used 2 women as example. One is Lady Diana, and the other one is Mother Teresa. You remember? Some of you remember, right? Lady Diana and Mother Teresa are classic examples of humanitarian things, especially in this world, in contemporary world. But the difference is that Diana gave monetary, if you calculate, gave probably much more than Mother Teresa gave, if you put a dollar value to it. But the difference is, in the process of giving, Diana didn't lose anything. She was still the princess. She still had fans, and she still had husbands or boyfriends, or she still had her mansion. She still had her reputation. She still had her fame and popularity, everything, but she gave. That's wonderful. But Mother Teresa was not just giving, she was losing. The only thing she had in possession was an umbrella, an extra pair of clothes, because when she washed her nun clothes, she had to wear another one. That's all Mother Teresa had. She never had a husband, never had children, never had mansion or a house or anything. She lost everything in the process of giving. And that's why you have the joyful smile of Mother Teresa. Some of us don't experience that joy in the process of giving is because we are just giving, we are not really losing. Jesus did not say give, but he said, if you lose your life for my sake. That's very important. There's a distinction between giving and losing. Okay, anyway, I'm not going to say that again. But they were 2 very somber, not very appealing sermons, and I believe because, it's all about giving. It's every pastor's, every church member's nightmare when their pastors start speaking about giving and, just try to milk, try to get every dime out of your wallet, and that's what these pastors are doing. But today is good because today I'm talking about receiving, okay? Because receiving, as I mentioned, is an integral part of giving. So I'm going to title my little talk today as Giving is Receiving. I know it doesn't make sense grammatically, but I think it's very interesting. So giving is loving, and giving is losing, but giving is also receiving. Because it's an automatic feedback loop God has created. Just like the credit card company, they said, sorry, Matthew, you cannot say that I don't want any reward. Reward is auto-generated. You don't have to do anything. So if you don't use it, we are going to give to somebody else. That's what they said. So don't say that, God, I don't want anything, because your reward is being generated automatically. You know, my father back in India, he always say, my favorite verse in the Bible is, God is not a debtor to anyone. And as a matter of fact, it is not in the Bible, I mean exactly in the same verse, but I cannot argue with him. He said, no, that is somewhere in the Bible, right? Like, you know, but that kind of sounds good, because it might be good to be in the Bible too. And it makes sense logically. God is not a debtor to anyone. God will never, ever make you go to heaven and say, by the way, God, don't you think that I am incredible? I gave you this much. No, he will not make you do that. That's why whether you want it or not, your act of giving is rewarded instantaneously, automatically. Psalms 23 says, goodness and mercy shall follow me all days of my life. Goodness and mercy shall follow you. It's almost like being chastened by a hunting dog or something like that. We are chasing goodness and mercy, but the scripture says you cannot avoid goodness and mercy, because they are like stalkers. They are stalkers. Goodness and mercy is stalking you. Even if you say, don't come after me. I don't want any goodness. I don't want any mercy. No, goodness and mercy shall follow you, because your God is not a debtor to you, to anybody. Reward is auto-generated. And God is so confident in his perfectly created reward system, and he even said, test me on this, right? There is only one thing God asked us to test him. You know, testing God is the worst kind of crime you can. I mean, Jesus said that very clearly to Satan. Yet God said, test me on this. You know what scripture I'm talking about? Malachi 3:10. Yeah, that's right. This is what it says. Bring the whole tithe into the storehouse, so that there may be food in my house. And test me now on this, says the Lord of hosts, if I will not open for you the windows of heaven and pour out for you a blessing until it overflows. So when God says, test me on this, God is not saying that, test me, but test the system. I have perfectly engineered, masterminded, conceived this, designed this amazing reward system, way better than that of Bank of America or any companies you can imagine. Now test this system. That's what the Lord is saying. Incidentally, there was a time in my life I did test this. I can tell you a lot of stories of giving and receiving, but this one takes the cake. 2003, I believe. So I have a missionary friend of mine. He's now a pastor in New York. And he was my inspiration. When I came into ministry, as some of you know, that my background is in corporate world. But this person really inspired me to come to ministry. He's a walking example of what faith life is, and I'm so proud to know him. And he has 2 daughters, and I have 2 daughters, as you know. But now he has 1 more son. But at that time, we both had 2 daughters. So one day we had this conversation. He came to visit me in Toronto, and we had this conversation. We said, coming from Indian family, as you know, when you have daughters, you have to be a little more responsible, right? Not like sons. Sons, nobody cares. Yeah, they all. But when you have daughters, as fathers, you feel that you have to be particularly responsible so that you save enough for their marriage or their studies, and all. That's the way, the Indian parents think. You know that, right? So we both talked to each other and said, hey, it's great to have this radical faith and, living by faith and all that, but now we have to be responsible. We have 2 daughters. You have 2 daughters and I have 2 daughters. So we should have some savings account. So we both had no savings account at the time. We only had checking account, right? That's all the money we made. But we were happy. Goodness and mercy was following us. So we didn't have to follow, any particular account. So we both decided, okay, you know what? Maybe we will have a checking account, savings account, and put $50 a month for our kids, their marriage or whatever. This is back in the days. And we decided, and then he went to New York, and I was in Toronto. Then he sent me an email immediately. He says, Matthew, I felt guilty that we felt that way. How can we say that we want a saving account? We should not have a savings account. We are testing, that means that we are not trusting the Lord enough. So I have decided, Matthew, to, have a different kind of savings account. I'm going to sign up for $50 a month to a new ministry. I'm going to invest in a new ministry, $50 a month. That is the kind of savings account we should have. So you can see how crazy this guy is, right? This radical he is. And that's why, that's the kind of people I hang out with. So I'm just a nobody, these faith heroes. And I'm like, okay. So I cannot open a savings account now. So I talked to Joanna and said, we should also do the same thing. Maybe we should contribute something, $50 or something to a ministry. And that should be our savings account. And God will reward us. And we kind of looked through our little minor budget we have. And we practically had no money to give at all, practically. Because we gave our tithe and, a little more than that too. We always try to make sure that we do that. And this is back in the days, Joanne was working some part-time. We had small kids, and I just came out of seminary. I was working as a youth pastor part-time in a Presbyterian church. We didn't know what we were doing, and renting and all that kind of stuff. So then we took a radical decision. We went to Malachi 3:10. I said, well, God said, test me on this. Let's do a test. My engineering background, I always believe in testing and, all that kind of stuff. Let's test the system. God asked us, right? So we decided, we looked around, how can we save some money so that we can open the savings account, which means giving some money to a ministry, right? That's a new ministry we wanted to give. So we decided, we realized that we live in a very nice neighborhood, upscale neighborhood at the time. More like Pasadena or even San Marino, kind of a very upscale neighborhood. And we were renting a brand new apartment. It's like a 3 stories townhouse, very cute. That's the first ever time we ever lived in a new apartment. Like that fresh smell of a new home. And it's very spacious. And it's kind of relatively expensive too, around $1,400 or so at that time. This is around 15 years back. So it was a big money, especially for us. Then we said, maybe that's a little too luxury for us. We are missionaries. We don't have to live in this neighborhood. And we don't have to live in such a nice, such a big, such a new house. So let's leave this and go and rent a cheap place. I'm sorry. And we will save that money, and whatever money we save, we'll give to a ministry. So we looked around, and we found another neighborhood, which is not that posh as the place, not Pasadena, more like Rancho Cucamonga or something like that. No, I know Rancho Cucamonga. Most of the people here are from Rancho Cucamonga, so that's my... But, it's not that very expensive. So we found a place. We found it in another neighborhood, and then it was a very, tall building, and it was on the 8th floor. The elevator was smelly and all that kind of stuff. But we found a place that was $100 cheap. So we were excited. So we thought, okay, we actually planned, I can't even remember which ministry. We decided to give that $100 to that ministry, and that's our savings account, great. And we planned everything, and then we went to the owner of this place, right, where we are currently renting. It's a corporate organization, and we said, and we gave our notice of, leaving. And then they looked at it and said, why are you leaving? And said, well, we wanted to save some money, and this is a little too much. We found a cheaper place. They said, how cheap? I said, we found $100 cheap. And the lady says, I'll give you $120 cheap if you want. You've been nice tenants, and you're the kind of people we want. So we will give you $120. Okay, I'm like so excited. What a miracle. God is really, the system is working, right? So I said, sure, why not? The same place, the same, we don't have to move and anything. So the lady gave me this $120. She said, I will draft the new contract with $120. So we called a ministry, and we, instead of $100, we pledged $120. So excited, our savings account is officially starting. And then I went to sign the contract with this new, you have to remember, this is in Toronto. Toronto, the rents will never go down. Every year, there is a government has put in practice, the landlords cannot increase the rent more than 4% because a lot of immigrants are coming in every single day. The rent goes up just like that unless it is controlled by the government. And this is also not an individual. Individuals say, okay, the poor Indian people, like maybe I'll give some. This is a corporate organization. They don't take that kind of decision. Anyway, so they give this $120 discount. The day I went to sign the contract, and so she drafted the contract, and it's a contract for new tenants, people who are moving in for new. For people who are moving in as new tenants, they give 1 month off, apart from the real rental. So they took another 1 month off in the contract. So that's another $1,400, which really means another $120 per month less, right? So I went to the lady and said, oh, there is a printing mistake. You thought, your system thought we are new people, so, And the lady looked at me and said, you know what, I don't want to go and correct it. Let it be so. Let it be so. And so the story, what I'm trying to say is, when you decided to take a little sacrifice, not sacrifice, but when you wanted to give $100 out of, above and beyond your means to the Lord, and you are testing the system, and what happened is, the Lord gave you $120 back that He can give to the ministry, and also He gave you another $120 so that He can keep it in your pocket. And to say that, don't you think that I will ever be your debtor? Don't you think that you can outgive me? Don't you think that you can win over me in this game of giving? Because the system I have created is so perfect. The reward is auto-generated. And this is a living example. This did not come from the Bible, it did not come from the book, and this is something which I have experienced, and I can tell you stories after stories and stories like this. I want us to know that when the Lord asks us to give, it is not like we are trying to help God or anything like that. He is trying to help us. See, giving to the Lord is perhaps one of the smartest investment we can make. I was reading a book lately about smart investment decisions. And of all the people, I should be the bad one. I don't have any investment or anything, so don't take this advice from me. But he summarized into 3 things, which I thought was very interesting. This is what he said. When you look for wise investment, these are the 3 things you have to look for. One is security. You cannot just put in a bank and one day you go to the bank and the bank disappears. It has happened recently to my father-in-law. He invested some money back in India in a bank. And, after a couple of years when he went there, the bank went bankrupt. They don't have money. So there's no security. He lost his money. Not a lot of money, but still. So secure. You have to have secure investment, right? And what did Jesus said? Mathew chapter 6:20, He said, store up for yourself treasures in heaven where neither moth nor dust destroys, and where thieves do not break nor they steal, right? So the most secure investment opportunity is what the Lord is giving you. A place where no thief can enter. A place where moth cannot enter. A place where it won't be rusted. So that here you have the most secure investment. And the second point he mentioned, the investment, is it should yield growth. Not just you put the money in and it has to increase, right? And this is, again, another thing about investing in India. We had some money invested in India back in the days, and the interest rate in India is way more than in the Western world. So we invested some money, not a lot of money. And then the currency went way up than we would have invested here. But what happens? Devaluation happens. So even though you have more money, Indian rupees there, when you convert it into the American dollar, it is actually going down. You know the devaluation principle, right? So there is not enough growth. And Jesus said, Matthew chapter 19:29, and everyone who has left houses or brothers or sisters or father or mother or children or farms for my name's sake will receive many times as much and will also inherit eternal life. Jesus is saying that if you invest in me, if you give it to the kingdom cause, you will get your capital and also many, many times more. The perfect growth, smart investment. And the third option, the third element of smart investment, he says, is accessibility or liquidity. You can invest in things. Real estate is a classic example. Many people put money in real estate and the value goes up more than any other market. And you think you have a lot of money, but you have no idea when it is going to come crashing down, like what happened in 2008. Then immediately, I want my money back. The value is going down. I want the money back. You can't get it because it's not accessible. It's not liquid, right? Liquid investment. So the point I'm trying to make is it has to be accessible. Jesus said, very simple, ask and you shall receive. If you invest in heaven, the ATM is right here, right now in your prayer. Ask. That's all you need to do. Whatever you have invested, you can just like that cash it out. It's that liquid. It's that accessible. So security, growth, and accessibility. This wise, very, very smart investment opportunity. That's why I said giving is receiving. One of the authors I really like, Randy Alcorn, said something like this. Saving a lot of money is not bad. There's nothing wrong in making money, by the way, right? As Christians, you make money through legitimate way. Make money, invest, make more money, get more money, save a lot of money, no problem. Don't be like me. Don't be like me in the sense that, I won't have savings account or, that kind of stuff. That's not for everybody. But making a lot of money, there's nothing wrong with it. But this is what he said. Saving a lot of money is not wrong. It's plain stupid. That's what Randy Alcorn said. It's plain stupid. Because you have no idea the value of this money is degrading because you're putting the money all in here. He says you rather invest in the kingdom work. And that kind of people who invest in it. This Jim Elliot, a very famous missionary, one day said this. He is not a fool who gives what he cannot keep to gain what he cannot lose. Did you hear that? Give what he cannot lose, he cannot keep to gain what he cannot lose. That kind of people, like my friend in New York, he is not dumb. He is the smartest investor I have ever met. And if I tell you his life story, you will shiver the way the Lord has brought him all the way up here. And I still look up to him. The same thing is Mother Teresa. And Mother Teresa, many people say, Mother Teresa, such a poor lady, the poor lady. You have no idea how shrewd and how smart that lady is. She is not dumb. She's not doing any sacrifice. She knows exactly what she's doing. She is putting all her money in the bank. She's transferring all those money. And we think she is dumb, poor. We are doing sacrifice. We are doing sacrifice. So be a smart investor for the kingdom. And God wants us to give so that we can receive. And that's another thing I want to say. The second reason God wants us to give is that is the only way we can transfer our wealth into the coming kingdom. Right? We always say, when you die, you cannot take anything. Right? But you can send it before. Did you know that? That's true. As much as it is true that when you die, you cannot take anything, You can definitely send the money before. Send whatever you have before. Yeah, Tozer, A.W. Tozer, another famous evangelical theologian, said this: anything given to God immediately touches the realm of immortality. I like that. Anything given to God immediately touches the realm of immortality. Immediately wire transferred to the heavenly account. It went from this world to the other world. You can definitely send it in advance. Otherwise, what going to happen to many of us is we will be in heaven and we will be applying for welfare checks in heaven. That's what's going to happen. By the way, I'm not joking, because many of us think that when you go to heaven, we are all going to be equal. It's all going to be socialism. We get all our nice, cushy life. No. The heaven, there is no socialism in heaven. You will be rewarded based on your intimacy level with Christ. You will be rewarded how you were close to Him, how you invested in His kingdom. That's the way you are going to be rewarded. So some of us are going to apply for welfare check. At least it's heaven. You won't be hungry. That'll be a nice thing. Anyway, so it's another way of transferring the money before. And the third and an important point I want to make is giving also gives us, I would say, a sense of direction and purpose in following Christ. Okay, I'll say, make it simple. Jesus said, where your treasure is, there will be your heart also, right? Many times we don't feel doing many things for the kingdom, or we are not particularly curious about the spiritual things, is because we haven't invested enough in that realm. That's why. See, a rich young ruler came to Jesus. You remember, right? He was a nice guy. He was doing everything according to the dot. He was fulfilling the law as much as he can. And then Jesus looks at him and says something very, very mean in a way, right? Jesus says, you have to sell everything and then follow me. You have to give everything to the poor and then follow me. And I'm like, if I was there, I would take Jesus aside and say, Jesus, this is not the way we do ministry. See, we have started a new Bible study at Sherman Oaks, Shanu's house. And one of the things, as a pastors, we have decided is that we should not talk about giving there because it's new. It's a new congregation. We just started 5-6 months ago. Most of the people are new. So don't teach giving right now because, then they will think that we are here to get all their money. We just teach them about the Bible and all the spiritual thing. But Jesus says here to this rich young man, he says, give first and then follow. And we say, follow first and then we'll teach you about giving after 3 years. And I've been a pastor here for almost 5 years, and it took me 5 years to teach about giving. I mustered the courage to stand up here and speak about it, almost 5 years. But Jesus didn't pull any punch. Jesus said, I'm going to teach you giving first. Following is a secondary thing. Because the reason is unless and until you give, your heart will not be there. Because where your treasure is, there is your heart. You give first, then your heart will be there. Then following is much easier. Following first and giving is still difficult. But you give first, following becomes very, very, very easy. I'm telling you, try it. Try it and find it out. It is. Now, let me come to the key words in closing. And one other thing here Jesus said is something which very radical. He said, you have to do it in secret, not only in secret. He said, what your left hand is doing, your right hand is doing, your left hand should not know about it. Now, what does that even mean, right? What your right hand does, your left hand should not know. So, we always talk about, in church circle, I'm part of it, as a preacher, we always teach people to tithe, right? That's something you owe to God, you have to give. And that kind of is, I would call it a cautious generosity, right? Like we need to give the tithe and more if we can. That's where we normally teach. And then some of us go a little more that we will give sacrificial giving, right? Sacrificial giving. we take pain. They say, give until it hurts, right? And then sacrificial giving. Now, Jesus asks us to go a little more further here. See, in the first case, when you're tithing, the other people don't know you are doing it, right? The secular world doesn't know. Only your church people know that you're giving. And this drives me mad when I go to some of these winners or some stops, and they always ask me to donate to charity. And I just don't like it. It's maybe $1 or something, but I just saved $1 there, with a coupon or something. Then they ask me for $1. And I'm like, sometimes I don't like being asked in public solicitation, so I won't give. It's people who look at me like, who is this guy? They're just asking for $1. But they have no idea what I'm giving to the Lord and I'm giving to the people, right? But that's okay. So that is not, what you're giving to the church, what you're giving tithe. The cautious generosity is secret to the public, but it is open to the church, right? And whereas the sacrificial generosity is even secret to the church. And I know some of you are giving to the Lord without any of us knowing. That's a sacrificial generosity which is even secret to the church. Now, Jesus said here, what your right hand is doing, your left hand should not know, which almost means that you have to be so secretive in such a way that you yourself should not know that you are giving. I'll give you a classic example. Mathew chapter 25, there is this episode in the finale, the grand finale of world history. The Lord is separating the world into sheep and goats. You remember the story, right? Sheep on his right side and goats on his left side. The nations, the people are gathered. And then the people on the right side, he says this. I was hungry and you gave me to eat. I was thirsty, you gave me to drink. I was naked, you clothed me. And I was in prison, you came to see me. You know what is their response? The immediate response of these people who are on the right side, they say, when did we see that, Lord? When did we see you hungry and gave you to eat? When did we see you thirsty and gave you to drink? When did we see you in prison and came to visit you? Because they have no idea they did that, because what their right hand did, their left hand did not know. They were not even cautious. They were not even conscious of their generous giving, which I would call some kind of, I don't know what to term that, but it's more like a spontaneous generosity. It's a natural generosity that they are not even sure they are doing it, because it has become a dispositional thing, right? Unless and until we reach that stage, and that's where Jesus is calling us. That has to be a self-automized process in us. It's like, my friend Dr. Alan Yamada is here today, and we connect in many levels, but one of the things I really appreciate about him is that he is a biker. He has a nice BMW bike, not like our little Kawasaki's, or like a real bike, man, like big one. So, I haven't driven. I have a motorbike license, but I haven't done this. And coming from India, almost all of us do this. It's very common to drive motorbike in India. But when I studied riding my motorbike, and one other thing which really intimidated me, the guy who taught me said, if somebody jumps into the road, which is very common in India, right? It can be a cow or a dog, and it's not like riding in a highway. So suddenly something jumps into the road, you have to do 5 things, okay? With left hand, we have to apply clutch, and with the right hand, you have to put the front brake, and also slide the accelerator down. This is all controlled by right hand. So the accelerator down with rolling with your right hand, and also at the same time holding on to the front brake. And with the left hand, you put the clutch. And with the left leg, you had to change the gear to go into the first gear or something. Otherwise, it will suddenly stop. And with the right leg, you had to apply the back brake. That's what happens. That's what you should do when somebody jumps into the road. And I'm thinking, you have to apply all the 4 limbs you have to do 5 different things. Instantaneously, somebody jumps in, and all the way, it's not a car, it's a 2-wheeler. And you have to balance yourself with your body too. There is no way I can learn this. There is no way I'm going to do this. Because I'm thinking the process of this 5 different things done with 4 different links. But now I do it automatically. I don't know. I don't think when somebody comes, oh, okay, let my left hand, left. If you think that, you fall. If you think that, you fall. Because it has to be a process, a self-automized process in which, I did all the 5 things in an instant without me knowing it. See, that's the kind of generosity and that's the kind of giving the Lord is calling us to do. That's why the people on the right side said, Lord, we have no idea. We have no idea that we were giving to you. We didn't know. Because we didn't do it so that we can get something. See, that's the problem with all this prosperity theology and all that. Actually, what they are saying is not bad. Some of these TV preachers, what they are saying is not wrong. Like I said, giving is receiving. There is nothing wrong with receiving. There is nothing wrong with the reward. It is integrally part of the system. But they are doing, the prosperity theologians. The problem is that they are teaching an investment scam. They are asking you to sign into cashback system. Just get whatever you get right now. Let's get a Ferrari so that you can drive in the street of LA. Whereas Jesus says, even if you have a Honda Civic, you can drive in the streets of gold in heaven. That's what you want. So what they're saying is not necessarily wrong, but it's an exaggerated version of truth, or it's a change of perspective which can really make us to give so that we can get. And Jesus says, you don't give so that you can get. The getting or the receiving is an automatically, is a process which goes with this, but it has to be so spontaneous, so natural, so within your disposition, and so secretive that even you should not know that you are giving, because you are giving not because you want to give, because you are a giver. You just become a giver. And that's the kind of giving we need to have. And last, I want to tell you one more story. And I told you the story of me testing God. There was another story, and I want to conclude the story with God also tested me on this. Okay? This is even painful story. I'll try to keep my composure when I say this. 2011, part of the story I might have shared it with somebody, but today I wanted to give you a proof too. So there is this, while I was in Toronto, I met this guy. His name is Dennis. He's a white Canadian guy. He's a homeless person, and he was living in a nice family, and then he went into drug problem, and his family had drugs issues and committing suicide. There are a lot of issues, and their house foreclosed, and eventually the guy lost his job and everything, and he ended up in the street, Dennis, the guy I met. And in the street, when he was at the rock bottom, the Lord saved him. The Lord saved him, and he became a street missionary. And what he does is, going into some of this northern Canada, Canada itself, everybody, when I say Canada, it's cold because it's north. Now, this northern Canada is even more cold. It's around 10-hour drive from Toronto, all the way up north. And he goes to some of this, that's where he actually lives. And he goes to the streets, and he put a big street sign which says Jesus is coming soon and all that. You have seen some of these roadside missionaries doing this, right? And whenever I see something like that, I say, oh, these people are crazy. And that's not how you should do it. And I still believe that that's not the way to do it. And I don't think that our church should go with a placard and say, you're all going to hell, or Jesus is going to come soon. That's so old. I mean, it doesn't speak to culture. I don't like it. But I also have, God has given me this audacity to explore what I don't like. So I wanted to explore what I don't like, which is Dennis and his life of faith and this audacious way of witnessing to God. So me and one of my other friends, we decided to go and stay with Dennis for a week. So Dennis is homeless. So he lives in a very rugged, it used to be his house. The bank foreclosed, and the bank was trying to sell this property, and the bank couldn't sell it. It's just like a shack Everything, the roof was fallen down. There is no insulation on the, but it was nearly summer. I thought, okay, I can do this, and I can do this, this adventurous mission journey and live with a homeless man for a week and see what he's doing. And if possible, I wanted to to put that in my neck, that placard, and take a picture of it so that, it's kind of one of my accomplishments, right? Like, to keep that, to tell people that, show people, what I've done, right? I went there with my friend and met Dennis, and we had, and this man is an incredible guy. I can't even, he is 10 times more radical than my friend in New York. So, I'm not going to describe who Dennis is. But I stayed with him for one night. The next day I chickened out because I couldn't stay there. Man, because he lives in a shack with no insulation, no roof, and it's summer, in the middle of the summer, but northern Canada is still so cold. I was shivering. I said, I will get sick. So the next day, we wanted to do 1 week. I told Joanne, I'll be away for 1 week. I don't want to come back as a failed missionary. So we'll stay in a motel. I don't want to be in this place. So we ended up staying in a motel for the next 4 or 5 days. Anyway, and we spent some time with Dennis, and this is what he does. He goes and hitchhikes from one place to another, and he shares the gospel and all that. And life of faith. Anyway, at the end of the day before we leave, so we were together. We had a couple other guys too, and 5 of us were standing together, and we held our hands, and we were praying as we were leaving. So then we said, okay, we will all pray for people who are standing next to you, standing on your right. So Dennis was on my right side, right? So somebody else was on my left side. They were praying for me, and he asked me, what should I pray for? And I said, okay, this is my prayer request. So he prayed for me. Then I asked Dennis, what should I pray for you? So Dennis, he says, Pastor Mathew, I'm 56 or something like that, late 50s at the time, and I've been doing this for a long time. I feel so lonely. I pray that I'll have a wife. I want to be married. And I'm kind of thinking, what have I gotten into? There is no way, Dennis, you're going to get married. You are homeless. You are homeless, and you are in your late 50s, and there is no way you're going to get married. Now, I'm kind of, this is all going through my mind. Why did I stand here? I should have stood on the other side. All these things, because I don't want to pray for him, because I clearly know you should not bother God with this kind of stupid prayer request, right? But, I'm kind of forced to pray it, so I just prayed a prayer, and I know God has heard many Hippocratic prayers, but that one takes the cake. My prayer that day was recorded in heaven's history as the most Hippocratic prayer, because I didn't believe any word I said, and I was cursing myself for man, I can't believe that I'm praying for this. Anyway, I prayed for Dennis. I had to do it. Just left the place with my life, and I'm happy. And this was in August. In November, I get a call from this other friend. He said, Mathew, Dennis was trying to reach you, and he doesn't have a phone, and he's a homeless guy, right? But somehow he reached the other guy. He said, Dennis was trying to reach you. Why? I said, oh, Dennis is going to get married, and he wants to invite you to the wedding. Come on, don't pull a prank on me, right? He's a pastor. I'm a pastor. Between pastors, we pull pranks too sometimes, So it's holy jokes. But I said, don't pull up. No, he said, no. Who is he marrying? He's marrying a doctor. What? Come on. What, theology doctor or something like that, right? No, the real doctor. She's coming from Korea, and she drives a BMW. It's an old one, but, and she drives a BMW, and she comes to northern Canada for missionary work. She saw Dennis, and somehow she fell in love with him, and she proposed to him, and they are going to get married, and they want you there. And I'm like, okay, I was so shocked. I felt like Jonah, at the end of this thing, everything, he prayed happened, but you still are mad at God. What in the world are you doing? And I'm praying for so many things, which is much easy for you to do. You're not doing any of this. You gave this homeless man a BMW driving medical doctor as a wife, and you are not giving me these small things I'm asking for the last 5-6 years. What in the world is happening? Anyway, I had my own grudges to God, and, I didn't end up going, not because of that. I was busy and I couldn't go. Now, If you thought that was the big story, it's still happening, okay? It's not, the big one is yet to come. So Dennis get married to this woman. Everybody in that little village was so excited, and the bank calls Dennis. So the bank owns Dennis's house, which was foreclosed. And they were trying to sell this for 10 years or 20 years, I don't know how long, and they couldn't sell, and they are incurring property tax on this property they are not selling. So the bank, it's a lost cause. So they felt somehow, they said, Dennis got married, we are going to give you back your house. Now, it's not even a house. Like I said, it's a messed up place, but they decided to transfer it back to Dennis. So Dennis gets this house, and he sells this house, which the bank couldn't sell for 10 years, in 2 weeks. He sells this house, and he gets $25,500 for that, selling that house, okay? $25,500. And the next week, I get a money order in my house. This is a money order I get from Dennis, the homeless man. He did not have a bank account, so he couldn't write a check. And so he took a money order for $2,550, which is the tithe of what he got. And he said, I'm not going to give to any church. I'm not going to give to any ministry. You are the one who prayed for me, and I'm going to give it to you. And he gave me that check. And I obviously encashed it. I said I won't take it, but he would insist. And anyway, I said, Dennis, can you write it to my ministry, so that he can get a tax receipt? I mean, he's a homeless person. He doesn't have a tax receipt. And he said, I want it to be written to you. Mathew, John, $2,550. And I still keep that in my hand because, sometime, sometimes you learn a lot of stuff and you think you got everything together and you think you know it all and you think you can get it, you can get everything done. You are just smart enough that you can take from here, God, be there, I can take the rest of it. And then God will show me that check. I want you to go back to that check, Matthew. I want you to know that I provided for you from a homeless man. And I want you to be embarrassed for a good reason. You tested me, didn't you? Now this is my test for you. When you are in ministry, you are going to see a lot of rich people. You will be tempted to go according to what they want. You will be tempted to befriend rich people, smart people, elegant people. You will be tempted only to speak in mega churches. You will be tempted to write only best-selling books. You will be tempted to go only to these nice places where you think whatever is happening in ministry. But I want you to always go back to this check and to know that I am providing you through a homeless man. Don't you ever depend on any single person or any resources on the earth. Because the moment you do, Matthew, that will be the end of you. That will be the end of your ministry. And that's a hard lesson God taught me. And that's the hard test. And I still hope that I am passing because I'm keeping it so that I can go back to it often enough. And I wanted to close with what Emmanuel reminded us. It's very, very important. That was my closing thing too. 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 12. It says, For I know, I like that. I know whom I have believed. And I am convinced that he is able to guard what I have entrusted to him until that day. I know whom I believe. And not only that, I know him, and I'm very, very confident. If I get a check from a homeless man, it is much easier for me to believe that the prophet was supplied bread by the crow or the little birds were supplying. When we read some of the stories, we think, it could have never happened, right? It could not have happened. The birds come with food for the prophet. Oh, yeah, it could very well happen. If a homeless person can write you $2,550, anything in the world is possible. I'm telling you. So that's why I know whom I have believed. And I'm confident that he is able to guard everything I have entrusted him. Because giving, in the act of giving itself, there is that process of receiving. And he is not a debtor. And we should be confident. I want us to close our eyes. Let's go to the Lord. And I know some of us are struggling with this issue, and some of us are in different stages of relating our own experience with God. How confident are we? You know, it's not so much about knowing God. It's not so much about being confident of God. Let me ask you this question. How much have you entrusted him with? See, that verse is very clear. It's also very clever. It says, I am confident that he is able to guard what I have entrusted. The problem is that we haven't entrusted everything to him. If he cannot guard which we haven't entrusted him, that is the problem. The problem is not about him guarding. The problem is us giving him, entrusting him with our money or resources, our education, our prestige, and whatever we have, can we give it to God so that he will guard us in the very day. Not only that, he will be able to multiply this. He will be able to give us many more. He will be able to exchange this, transfer this to heaven. And I'm telling you from my own experience, from the authority of the scripture, if you give him your wealth, he will give you his treasure. If you give him time, he will give you eternity. And if you give him your life, and he will give you immortality. And you will be blessed with the everlasting life.